Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sports Psych Show. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, today, I'm honoured to be speaking with leadership coach and team architect, Donna Fishter. Donna, welcome to the Sports Psych Show.
Oh, Dan, it's awesome to be here with you. Excited.
Well, I'm excited to be talking to you. Why don't we start by you introducing yourself to the audience of the Sports Psych Show?
Yeah, sure. I have coached football, soccer over here in the States for 20 plus years. 13, although youth, and college. 13 of those years was at University of Central Florida, and part of my job there was the leadership training, culture development, kind of teaching our players, people skills. And so I saw the difference that it made, and just passionate about this side of the game. And so I thought, okay, yeah, there's going to be one more transition in my life, and decided to get out of the X's and O's and formed my own, although I love the X's and O's still, I'll tell you, I can talk shop. Formed my own consulting business. And so right now I work with teams all across the country with their culture, training their leaders. I coach coaches and work with individual athletes, mentoring them through the game. Yeah, I live the dream every day, Dan. It's awesome.
I'm intrigued because having been obviously being a coach of the X's and O's, as you'd say, and now you're involved in college programs and high-level programs, soccer programs. Do you sometimes get tempted to advise on the X's and O's or have a conversation around the X's and O's? Do you have to regulate yourself when it comes to some of the things that you see some of the time?
Yes. Yes. But here's how I deal with that. Well, number one, I can't, per the NCAA, I can't talk tactics or I can't talk soccer per se to the athletes, because then I become what's considered accountable coach, and so I refrain from that. Okay. But I do have an open door to talk tactics, X's and O's with the coaches, and I'll on a Thursday, Friday night, I'll have TVs, iPads, computers pulled up with all my teams playing. And I'll shoot some text messages, for afterwards and say, hey, look, you need to change this, you need to do that. And they know me, so they know they're going to get it. And some coaches even ask, they're like, hey, what do you think, And so, yeah, I think that's the fantastic part about that. Like, I've lived their life, right? And so yeah, it's fun. Now, I do work with other sports. So, I know enough in other sports to be dangerous, but I stay away, basketball, lacrosse, I stay away from tactics there with the coaches because I don't know anything.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because they're team invasion sports. So, they're about space and time and movement. So there's
I
a lot of
understand,
crossover.
But yeah, I ask a lot of questions when I'm working with other sports. So.
Okay, fair enough. And you said something really interesting there. You said that there's a policy from the NCAA that you can't talk the X's and O's, the tactics, the tech with players.
Correct.
I find that interesting because I think you'd agree, and I think we've had this conversation before, that integration between the psych piece and the tech, tack, and physical, and the leadership piece and the tech, tack, and physical, it's so integrated rather than isolated. It's so integrated that, I'm certainly not a soccer coach, but sometimes you have to refer back to the game models and the principles of play.
Yes.
I mean, how careful do you have to be with the players?
Well, you're exactly right, Dan. I mean, I have to refer back to explain something or connect the dots, right? And so that's okay. I'm not advising them on the X's and O's. I'm just saying, hey, for example, right? Like when you take a bad touch, or when something about this pass, or you see something specific on the field. So I might refer to something, and then I say, okay, well, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? How are you communicating?
Yeah.
So what's great about in soccer is I can kind of throw out an example or a scenario, a situation, and so I can talk about the game in that sense, but I can't teach or advise them per se.
Gotcha. So you can
on the game.
You can refer to the game, but you can't introduce something new or instruct them essentially.
Yeah, I can't say, well, try this. Try this next time. That's not my role. That's not my job. And yeah, the NCAA says I can't do that, and so I abide by it.
Fair enough. Now, our relationship, friendship goes back about 4 or 5 years. I remember watching you present in LA, Los Angeles, at the United Soccer Coaches Convention, and really enjoyed it. And one thing you said, which I loved, which people in our position tend to remind coaches of, and you'll have to excuse me here, I'm going to try and get this story right, but you were just talking about coaches advising players, and particularly low performing players. And you said, please don't just tell them to work harder. And
my gosh.
You were quite vociferous in saying, don't do that. And you held a steely gaze to the audience and were very insistent, which I completely agree with.
Oh my goodness. But we do that, don't we? I did it when I was a coach. And, through the past couple of years, I just, it's just become aware to me that, like, okay, well, if we just tell them that, first of all, what does working hard mean, right? I mean, it means different things to different people depending on your commitment level. And then they finish the sentence, Dan, right? They finish the sentence. They say, oh, coach said, keep working hard. And then that means that I'll get, XYZ, playing time, I'll get to start, I'll get to travel. And so in their head, they finish the sentence. And so, because really, honestly, right, in the college game, a player can work hard every day and they're still not going to get in the game because somebody else on the team is just as talented. And so I think that's why, what you do is so vitally important for players, because they've got to sort through that emotionally, right, mentally, and value themselves enough to still show up and give 100%.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes this notion of working hard is a binary thing. You're working hard or you're not working hard. I mean, there's a scale there, and sometimes actually improvement requires less work but better work. Sometimes it requires more rest and recuperation. Sometimes it just requires a more effective negotiation or co-creation between coach and athlete, doesn't it? It's not. It's not obvious.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was talking recently to a team, and I said to them, commitment is not based on time, right? It's based on depth of energy. And because I think that's what a lot of players think, they go out and they check a box. Well, I touched the ball, coach, or, they feel good about themselves because they did, a couple of drills at half speed, but I got out there, I did it. Well, I would have to go out there for 20 minutes drenched in sweat and get something out of it than an hour just juggling the ball with no purpose, right? So to me, it's your commitment level is shown in the depth of energy that you put into a session, personal or team, versus the time, right? It's not necessarily quantity, like you said. It's quality.
I love that idea. Commitment is not based on time, but depth of energy. And so do you find in your work with coaches that you're trying to help them to help players utilize their energy better, to look at the game a bit more subtly than it's just about time?
Yes. I'm trying to help coaches every day say things different ways, emphasize things certain ways, change their tone, whisper things sometimes for emphasis, tell the story, right? Because each player is potentially different. So, right, there's I call it kind of umbrella communication when you're talking over a whole team. It's kind of the umbrella of the whole team. So you might say it a certain way there, but then for that particular player A, okay, coach, yeah, it's this. You need to do this to get better performance out of them, right? And so it's coaching the coaches, helping them decipher that.
That term, coaching the coaches, I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, you've hit on a point there: communication, individual difference, the requirement for coaches to communicate to individual differences. That perhaps sometimes they can be guilty of that umbrella communication, as you said there. So is much of your work based on coaching the coaches more so than anything else?
I would say a large, a large portion of it is, but it's through working with the team, right? It's a whole package, and the coach is the leader, ultimately, right? If you think about the law of the lid, right? The lid is the coach is the lid to the team, right? You say, John Maxwell's scale 1 to 10. 1 is your worst day ever. 10 is your best day ever, and you are somewhere on that scale every day. And what he says is followers very seldom rise above the level of their leader. So if the leader, if the coach is at an 8 on a given day, or 7, let's say, their team, their followers are not going to rise above the level of a 7, right? So the coaching the coaches is vitally important to me. I'm passionate. I have a passion for coaches because I've sat where they have. I could tell you, no matter what time of year it is, what a coach is doing, thinking, feeling, like what they're trying to forecast, right? Because I've been there, and it's not easy. It's a go, 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 go. You feel like you have zero downtime, and that can become unhealthy. Let's just put that out there, right? And so our coaches, I even felt it when I was in it. I thought to myself, oh my goodness, do coaches get a sabbatical? Like professors, right? Let me take a breath. But we don't. And so how do we make sure that coaches are at 100% out there, right? And so let me make one more comment about coaching coaches, because I'm kind of veering off into a whole nother rabbit trail. But when you think about the world now and executive coaches, right? I mean, I read a book by Bill Campbell. Well, it was about Bill Campbell. It's entitled The $1 Trillion Coach. And Bill Campbell was an executive coach for huge corporations and executive teams, Google, Apple. I mean, the list goes on. And he said every executive needs a coach because they need that person to lean on. They need somebody holding them accountable. And I think it's the same. I think it's the same in our industry. It's this idea of, especially head coaches. So let's just stick with head coaches. I had one of my head coaches say this to me one time. Had been working with him and his team for over 2 years, and he said to me, "Big D," because that's what everybody calls me in the soccer world, right? Big D. He said, "I love having you in my life because there's some things that I can't talk to my assistants about, or I don't want to, right? The quote unquote, the people under you. I don't really want to use the word under, but right, that I don't want to talk to my assistants about. There's things I don't necessarily want to go talk to my administration about, the people over me. There's things I don't want to take home with me, right, and unload on my family. And of course, there's things I can't talk to the part. And so, there you are. That you are the person that I can call at 11 o'clock at night, or 10 o'clock at night after a win, after a loss, after a win. I mean, who knows what, and talk things out. And coaching the coaches, it's about, okay, well, what does the coach want to get better at? And then who's holding them accountable? I mean, right? I mean, think about it. And then it's just, it's the accountability, the literally, calling them out on things. It's like, no, you said you wanted to do this. You said you were going to change, and now this happened, right? Is their assistant going to say that to them? I mean, in our perfect world, or in a perfect world, I would say I would hope that an assistant would have that type of relationship with their head coach where they could step in there. But then sometimes it's not going to happen, right? And so I think coaches having a coach is vitally important, and I think it helps so much in the when I see it, I love it.
It's interesting when you talk about head coaches being able to get on the phone to you at 11 o'clock at night, and then you also use the term hold accountable. I talk to coaches every day about having two dials when they're working with players, a stretch and a support dial. Stretching players and supporting players. Two dials that you're going to have to play about with to help them acquire skill, to help them engage, to help them build the capacity to compete. And when you're saying that, it sounds to me like coaching the coach is very much that stretch and support. The support on the phone at 11 o'clock at night, but also the stretch from a hold accountable perspective.
100%. I love that. Yeah, I mean, this is why I love what we do, is because it's about people. Everything, it translates between coaches and athletes, right? I think your high performance mindset, the HPM, right? I love that. And I think coaches for themselves need to be thinking about that, right? They're transferring it to their players, but and this is where I started talking a little bit about earlier is, well, why isn't the coach thinking about how are they at high performance on game day? Are they just this invincible person where, my thoughts and feelings aren't going to affect them, or their bad day isn't going to affect them? How do they want to arrive at the field and their demeanor and energy level, right? So, we ask our players, okay, to be at 100%. So what does that entail? Rest, recovery, nutrition, the mental side of the game. What they're thinking as they arrive, their game face, right? That's part of your HPM.
Yep.
The game face, the match script. The match script for a coach could be related to their sideline demeanor, that they're, working on something or what have you. So, what is the coach? What are coaches doing to make sure that they're getting to 100%? I venture to say, and this is totally a shot in the dark, totally random, my opinion, from being in the game, a college coach, I think college coaches are surviving at 75%, like 75% capacity of their 100. Because they work so hard, right? I'm not saying that they're not getting results. You know what I mean? But how much better could they be? How much more could they achieve? And just who are they becoming? Could they become a better person even? I know there's a lot in there.
There's some great stuff, and unpacking it a bit, delving into your experiences. You gave us a scale of 1 to 10 there. I think you referred to John Maxwell and the law of the lid, and players not being able to perform over the head coach's own performance, I think is what you said, and please correct me when you come back to this. But when you think of your coaching, if you go back to your coaching career, because as you said, I was thinking with the word empathy when you talked about, I've been there, I know what it's like. And I think that's that can be important. It's not imperative, but I think it can be important and powerful. When you think back, and you're talking now about coaches being at 75%, was that you? Were you 75%?
Yeah. I would, yeah, I'll admit that. I'll confess it. I think I was doing the best that I could, and I think coaches absolutely are trying to do the best that they can. But is it healthy? Right? I mean, and are we happy? Are we enjoying all domains of all areas of our life, right? And so I think if I could go back, I would try to adjust some things for sure. And now there's so many moving parts to this, Dan, because of course you've got some schools, some universities that have small staffs. It's two people, it's two coaches. Other universities have larger staffs, and managers and volunteers and this. And so, the school with two coaches, I mean, it's tougher on them potentially, right? And so there's context to everything. But I think, and just to go back to the scale, that John Maxwell's scale, it's figuratively speaking, right? Because I mean, obviously, when you say the players can't surpass the level of the head coach, well, the performance per se of the head coach is different.
Of course,
it is different than obviously the players, right?
Sure.
I mean, the coach isn't getting out there and doing stuff, but kind of a more figurative, like big picture thinking. So,
yeah.
So take for example, when I'm training captains on a team, the leaders on a team, it is 100%, more literal for them, where it's, look, if you're a 6 on fitness, nobody else on the team is gonna. If that's my captain who's running, based on the scale 1 to 10, a 6 or a 7 on fitness. Yep. Well, why do I need to be better than that, right? And so I try to push, captains, the leaders on the team, push their lid higher, so to speak. You all, as a group of leaders, right? Because I know everybody has a bad day, right? So we offer ourselves grace and have compassion. But as a group of leaders, they've got to push their lid higher and higher, so that they're 8, 9, 10, so that they're pulling the rest of their team higher. I don't believe in you're only as good as your weakest link, because, and maybe I'm trailing off here, but I just had this thought. You're only as good as your leaders are on a team, right? You're only as good as your captains are pulling your team in a direction. Because I can close the gap. I can. Okay, my weak links at the bottom. I call them the cabooses. They're the end of the train, but if they get better, okay, sweet, right? We close the gap. All right, we've got more here. But is the whole train moving forward, right? We've raised the bottom up, but I want the leaders pushing the lid and the whole team, right, then exploding and having vertical progress. So, that's just a side note.
No,
off topic.
No, it's not. I think it's very much on topic. I'm thinking here as you're speaking, I think the challenge is, how do we get to 8, 9, 10 without exhaustion? How do we explore 8, 9, 10 as a deepening of energy or utilization of energy? How do we explore 8, 9, 10 in as efficient manner as possible? Right, what I hear you say, and obviously you have a great deal of knowledge of, say, the college system in sports in the States, which is one of the world's biggest sporting systems in many respects, across all sports, is that culture is hard work. Let's get to 10 by working hard. And what I hear you say is, actually, we're working hard and we're actually pushing ourselves down that scale as a consequence of working hard, which is quite endemic in high performance sports. And actually probably the realization that we're having across sport at the moment, certainly in the realm of sports psychology, for me, or my interpretation, is actually, in terms of individual differences, can less be more? Can we create Olympians? Can we create professional soccer players, or high-performing college soccer players, or baseball, basketball, football as in American football? Can we create these? Can we help these players, people, create themselves by helping them become more efficient with their energy, rather than just work hard, work hard, work hard? That's, I think, where there's a shifting landscape.
I agree. I think the culture, the college, culture here in football, soccer is it is hard work, but to the detriment in some people's lives, in what I've experienced and see. This is not exhaustive here, but it's to the detriment of what in our lives, right? Like, who's getting who's drawing the short straw? Who's getting the short end of the stick, so to speak? Is it your family? Is it? And so I think it's having some introspection, right? Looking internal, and knowing some things about yourself. Okay, what refuels me? How do I get energy? Right? And for everybody that's different. Okay? But do you know that and then carve out time in your schedule to make sure that that happens? Right? For me, it's going to Starbucks and reading a book that, some people say, oh my gosh, well, you're reading one, well, oh my gosh, now it's the pandemic. So how are you doing that? So, I adjust. Okay. Right. There's context to everything, but yard work, yard work at my own house, yard work refuels me. I do some of my best thinking out there pulling weeds. Right. And I say that people laugh at me or kind of, they look at me and say, what? There's no way. You need to go lounge on the couch, watch TV. I'm like, no, this is, I know myself. Right. And so I think that's where I always talk about, we need to go find a park bench and sit and like learn, discover things about ourselves. So what re-energizes us? How do we recover the best? Are we eating healthy? Do we need to change the way that we're eating so that we've got enough energy to get through the day? Where am I at in the areas of my life as far as family, finances, social, the social, piece, hobbies, right? I mean, because sometimes a certain hobby might refuel somebody. So I think it's knowing ourselves, and then it's scheduling it, like make time. We have to honor ourselves that way. And if we say, well, there is no time, well, then therein lies the problem, right? We've got to figure it out. I think there's a way, and I'm not saying it's easy by any means. I think it's difficult. But I think of it this way. So here's, well, when I think about high performance, and you can use this, I use this with athletes, and you can use it for coaches too. It's are you into race cars at all?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not, but like I know enough again to be dangerous, right? Okay. So Indianapolis 500,
Yep.
right? The big, big race. Which car wins the race? What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of people will say the fastest car, but I think that's
good.
usually
so just play along.
Yes.
Just play along.
Go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on. The fastest car, Donna.
The fastest, right? No, it's not. It's not the fastest car. The car that wins the race is the one that is the most efficient in the pits.
Yep.
Right? And so because that car, and I might have these stats wrong. Okay, I looked it up once, so there might not be right, but somewhere's around lap 25, the car needs new set of tires. By lap 35, it's out of gas. Right, whatever the numbers are. I mean, the car cannot stay on the track going at 100%, let's say, right, as high performance, because it's gonna run out of gas. It's gonna need new tires. It's gonna need new this, that, blah, blah, blah. And so it has to come into the pits. So as an athlete, you can't go 100%. Like, your body has to recover. Your emotional energy, right? Your mental energy has to recover. And so we have to come into the pits. Can we, as a human being, and figuratively speaking, again, I'm using the pits as our our recovery, how are we efficient? Are we efficient in that area? Running ourselves ragged on the track, Dan, is not gonna. We're not gonna win the race that way. We're not.
And I also think you can extend that metaphor in many respects, because
do it for me, because I'm going to use it. Tell me.
in any race, you're going to have straights and you're going to have bends, and you can go 100% on the straight, but you can't go 100% on the bend. Otherwise, you're definitely going to crash. Now, let's just play with this here. I mean, we're having some fun with it. I agree with you. The pits is the rest and recuperation piece. And I don't think we take that seriously enough yet. I think we're starting to with things like mindfulness and meditation as active rest, if you like, and that can involve developing a form of mental skill. But I think the point of the straights and the bends, of course, there are games and activities and things that a high-performing athlete is going to engage themselves in, and they're all in, and it might be the grind in the gym for half an hour, it might be going at 100% with attitude, effort, and energy in the match, or in a small-sided game, or keep ball, or whatever it is. But then you've got the bends, and for me, the bends are actually the deliberate thought about your play. Stop, think, the self skills. If you said, "Who am I?" If we're talking about players here, who am I? Where am I with my game? What have I got to think about working at? Maybe I can't go 100% in this training session. I've actually got to stop and reflect upon my positioning, my shape, be aware of where I am in the game. Can I improve? Basketball, can I take the 3-point throw rather than actually passing? Baseball, when I'm facing that pitch, can I just get my weight transference a little bit better? Deliberate practice in golf, can I actually stick myself in a tough position in the bunker and try and dig my way out of that and practice doing that? I think sometimes we've got to. It's not so much the grind. It's the bends are in the race, so the intelligent side of things. It's stop and think and reflect, and that's kind of how I'm filling out that metaphor a little bit.
Yeah. The reflection piece is huge for me, and where my brain is going now is the idea of are we going to the 30,000 foot view, I call it, right? Go to 30,000 foot view of your life, of even who you are as a coach, right? How you coach, and what you're taking the bend, right, of the racetrack, and what do you need to be deliberate about right now in this segment of the season, right? Based on this past week's practices, games, do I need to slow down a bit around this bend and rethink a couple things? Right, and this can trail into the why do we do it the way we do it? Well, because we've always done it that way. Okay, well, why? Why? Right. So to me, the 30,000 foot view involves that too. It's looking sort of big picture at everything, and saying what. Okay, why do we do it this way? Is this the best way? And if the answer is yes, fine. But at least you've thought it, you've reflected, right? And so that's where my mind went when you were talking about, we got to slow down on the bends a little bit and think, what do we need to be deliberate or intentional about right now in the race, per se. And I think as coaches, we need to go to the 30,000 foot view of our program too. Ourselves as a coach, we cannot forget that, right? But then also the program. And I think it's, a lot of people say, well, I don't have time. And again, it's, well, you might be missing information that you can see from up there, right? Because you're kind of looking looking at everything and asking some why questions. And it might be vital information that we need. So can we take 30 minutes, right? Like I always say, you go find a park bench and sit and breathe and reflect and take some time to be intentional about some things. We get sucked into, like, our, in this metaphor we're talking about, our hands just gripping the steering wheel, like we're right there in the moment. And you and I, we talk about presence and being in the moment, right? That's the mindfulness piece. But if we have to also go big picture. So I think another analogy I love is, you go into an art gallery and some paintings, they're as big as the wall, right? They're huge. And so if I get up close, I mean, I know they usually have those stanchions up, but let's just say I could get super close. This painting is the whole wall. The canvas covers the whole wall, but I can get up, like, have my nose, like, 4 inches away from the canvas. And I'm looking straight ahead. What do I see? Well, I see probably a 4 inch by 4 inch area. I see probably some colors, maybe some texture, different brush strokes, right? But if I walked in there blindfolded and took the blindfold off, and so that's all I have is this 4 inch by 4 inch. I don't really know what's going on. I don't see the big picture. I don't understand the story, like the purpose, right? But then if I back up to the other side of the room and I can see the entire picture, right? It changes everything. It changes everything, right? So the 30,000 foot view involves, thinking about who you are as a person and purpose in life, and what contribution or fingerprint you want to make on the world. It's like all that stuff is important because it's what drives us, Dan, right? It's what drives us every day.
You do wonder if a big part of the skill of coaching is the capacity to know when to go closer to the picture and to study the small detail, and then know when to scale back and actually have a look at the bigger picture. Yeah,
I think it's a skill that we have to practice as coaches, and it's a constant back and forth. It could be in a practice session, being close, right, to the painting, and then pulling back, right? I think as high performance people and elite players, coaches, like, we're always wanting to get better. We're always looking for excellence. We can get, even sucked into a drill. It's like, well, this isn't working or that isn't working. Or, okay, well, fair enough, right? And I might agree with you. And if we go big picture, though, like, okay, from the start of practice to now, like, maybe is this and that player better, or is the team better, or have we progressed in one certain area, or is it, but they're competing, like the drill doesn't look perfect the way that it was set up, technically they're off, but they're competing, and that intangible, right, that intensity is there. And so big picture, maybe that's what we were going for, and so it's fine, right? So even in 2 hours, you might be close in and looking at small details, and have to pull out and say, okay, yeah, but this is good.
just want to shift gears slightly. You're a leadership coach, team architect. When you're working with teams, is that in big groups, small groups, a range of things?
A range. It depends. It depends on what a team needs. Typically, I'll have sessions with the entire team that are based on culture, infrastructure of culture, the cultivating that, right, and then from there, I'll split the leaders off and have leadership meetings with them. But then it could be specific topics, right? That maybe a handful of players need something specific, and so I'll talk just to them, or a lot of times I'll talk to the freshmen or the rookies, right? The coming in to a team, because they're having to understand the bare bones of culture, and so I sort of get them up to speed with our language, right, and get them fluent in our language and understanding kind of the way that we look at it and package it, and then what's most important, and helping them with their thoughts and feelings through the process. So it, and then I meet with individual athletes. I'll meet with assistant coaches, head coaches, the staff together, because the staff is the team within the team, I call them. So their relationships with each other is vitally important, because that's the picture, that's the example for the players, the teammate to teammate relationship, right? How is the staff existing, operating, and functioning together? Because the team is going to mirror that, right? And so, every team is different, but it's gonna kind of pan out in those directions.
That's a really interesting concept, that the relationship between the coaching staff can be mirrored by the playing staff.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as parents, right? I mean, how parents relate to each other and exist together and function and operate, how they communicate, that is setting an example, that's teaching their children. And so I think it's the same in athletics, right? And even down to it's what is okay and what's not okay, right? On the sideline during a game, right? How an assistant approaches the head coach with information, or maybe is challenging the head coach on a decision that he or she wants to make, and is really wants to hold to it and doesn't want to back down, right? What does that look like? How does that play out? Because everybody on the bench is seeing that, right? And I think it's okay for there to be conflict as long as it's productive conflict, right? Productive conflict, and there's an understanding that the relationship goes deeper than the current circumstance. Right, and so, there's information. Our players are taking in information all the time, and so we have to be cognizant of that. And even in our demeanors, right, on the sidelines, all right, this goes into body language then, right, which you talk about so much, and I love it. It's what is what is the perception your body language is giving off on the sideline coach? And some coaches will say, that's not, that's not what I was thinking, or that's not where I was at, in my head, or feeling. So they're wrong. Well, okay, but what do they say? Perception is reality, right? I mean, we got to think about, what do we want? What might they perceive? And can we be intentional about making sure that those messages are the message we want them, them receiving? So, I mean, those are part of the people skills, the self skills that we as coaches, when I, circling all the way back to the introspection piece that I talked about, and knowing yourself. I mentioned the webinar I was on with United Soccer Coaches a few weeks back. Well, maybe just 2 weeks back. I talked about the law of magnetism as something, and that's a John Maxwell piece. He says the law of magnetism is that there's things in our personality that draw people to us, right? We're a magnet, and those things draw people to us, especially as a coach, right? You want to know what those are, because you want to use them, right? Because players have to buy into you before they're going to buy into anything you ask them to do. They got to buy into you as a person. But the opposite of the law of magnetism, right? There's always another side. The other side of the coin is, there are things in our personalities that repel people from us, and so I think we need to know those things, and we need to learn how to shift some things, right? Not that it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but surely in some of these scenarios, you're not trying to have people repel from you, right? And it's as simple as this. I'll give a personal example, right? I'll be authentic and vulnerable. So, and I've told people this before. One thing that, and I learned this from my leaders when I was at UCF. I actually asked my leadership group with 4 or 5 kids that year on sorry, I even call the college players kids because I just feel old. But we had a leadership council, and I was vulnerable with them, and I said, okay, I was teaching them the law of magnetism as leaders, right? And so I put myself out there, and I said, okay, is there anything that repels people from me? And so one of the players said, well, sometimes you have this really angry looking face. And I mean, my coaching philosophy and my business philosophy is relationship centered. And, I mean, the players, could come in and talk to me all the time, and we would meet. I mean, I was, relational. Yet they were telling me there's these, sometimes you have this face that is like, it's like, whoa, don't go in Big D's office right now. And I said, okay, so what? So I was curious. I think curiosity is, we've got to be curious about things. And so I asked another question. It's okay, well, can you be more specific? Because I want to know this, because I don't ever want somebody to feel like they can't walk into my office. Like, that goes against my coaching philosophy, right? Or who I want to be. And so we pinpointed some moments, and basically it was like when I'm in my zone, right? I mean, you could literally say it's flow state, right? I'm in my zone, and for example, it was before, maybe we're leaving on a trip, and so I was travel coordinator. So, I'm thinking about, the flights, and are we arriving on time, and, do we have everything? And And so I would have this facial expression and this aura, of that I was angry, and so I said, okay, well, can you guys help me with this, right? And so one kid took it very seriously, and so when she would see that, she would just kind of knock on my window and just kind of, do the pencil in the teeth smile, and I knew, and it's like, okay, yeah. You shake my head and smile, right? So, law of magnetism, what repels people from you, right? And I mean, there's probably a whole, a gamut of things, and if a coach can't pinpoint it, well, the people that work with you probably can, right? They can probably tell you.
I think it's really interesting. I think that the two words I wrote down as you were speaking were introspection and feedback. And from the introspection perspective, I mean, obviously you dived into a specific area, which for me is personality characteristic. We're all going to have our own concepts and colloquialisms, but is personality characteristics. I mean, you describe magnetism, and I completely agree in terms of, we're going to have characteristics that could be construed as positive, but positive characteristics can work for and against us.
Yes.
We can have negative characteristics, again, negative in inverted commas, that can work for and against us. And we could take what could be construed as positive characteristics, like, I don't know, perseverance, which everyone would go, yeah, thumbs up. That's a positive personality characteristic. The reality is, there's sometimes when perseverance doesn't help us, it gets us into trouble. So there's a very interesting scenario there. But just being, as you're saying, being introspective about just thinking about who we are. Thinking about our behaviours, thinking about our thinking, a real metacognition thing there. But also what I love about what you're saying is feedback, and feedback from others. And you got, feedback from your students, and to the point, was something that could be construed as quite personal, and then giving a student a permission to be able to, almost do something that feels a little bit patronising, which is, as you say, doing a big smile and saying, "Hey," and it's laying yourself bare whilst recognising. So it's that vulnerability piece, while recognising you're not diminishing your authority in any way.
Correct. Now, let me add this. So, I would not ask a question like that for feedback from someone I have not given. Let me see. How do I say this the best way? I'm going to ask that question to people that I know are invested, right? That I've invested in, and they're invested in me and the team and program, right? I'm not. I mean, look. Let's be honest. There's players on teams that are unhappy because they're not getting because they're not getting what they want, basically.
Yeah.
Playing time, whatever. And so that may not be a student that I ask for feedback from. Right? I mean, I think we have to consider. Who are we giving the privilege of speaking back into our lives? I think you want to handpick those people.
You got to choose wisely. You got to choose the people that you're going to allow to give you some very strong feedback. You got to pick wisely. Right,
and so that's why I typically will just do that with a leadership group that I've spent quite a bit of time with, because I know those kids are not going to go back in the locker room and say, "Hey, ha ha ha, Big D has this problem and asked me to help her with this." Blah blah. It's that's something that I knew was not going to happen with those particular players. And so you got to think about who you're getting feedback from. But I think here's the thought with feedback is it's one thing to be able to receive feedback. It's another thing to ask for it. Like, that's deeper to me. That's another layer deeper. Of asking, being vulnerable and asking for it, and asking somebody to be honest, to lean more on the, be tough on me side than, making it feel good.
It takes bravery, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Donna, I think we've hit upon some fairly deep topics there, haven't we? I mean, I'm thinking at the end of this conversation, I'm thinking introspection, the importance of feedback, personality characteristics, communication, the importance of coaches, being coached and being coachable. I'm thinking of actually almost the paradox of stepping back in order to step forward.
Yep. Yeah.
Taking rest in order to drive further.
Yes. Yes.
And we've got a wonderful Indy 500 metaphor that we can share in the future with
yes, and I've got, in addition, that I can the bends, I can add that in,
bends and pit stops and tire changes and all kinds of things, and ultimately squirting the champagne on everybody at the end.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, look, this has been a really, really interesting conversation, and I know that you will have tapped the interest of loads of the listeners. So, how can people find you? Have you got a website? Do you use social media, Twitter, etc.?
Yeah, my website is donnafishter.com. And so I've got tons on there about what I do. There's a resource page with some video clips from different sessions, some blog articles. And so definitely you can visit there. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. And so both those handles are just my full name, Donna Fishter. And so you can DM me or in either of those social media platforms. And then my email address is you can email me at info@donnafishter.com. And yeah, I'd love to hear from people. I think this is fantastic conversation that probably makes people think, and that's what I love to do. I love to put the light bulb on, and I think you and I mean, we could banter all day on this stuff, and it's great to be of like minds and almost kindred spirits on this side of the game. And so I want to challenge coaches or even players who are listening to this to find the park bench, to be introspective, because who we are as people is so important. I mean, it's everything, right? I'm reading this book by it was published in 1943. It was referenced in another book I was reading, 1943, by Harry Fosdick. It's called "On Being a Real Person." I had to buy it on eBay, and he says this. He says, "Our primary responsibility is to be a real person." I mean, think about it. Our primary responsibility is to be ourselves. We're entrusted with a personality, and there's choices in that, right? There's choices in that, and I think that's what you and I are talking about here. It's being deliberate and intentional about who we are as people and who we're becoming, and then how that impacts the others around us.
I think it's what you do, and I suppose what I'd like to think I do and what others do in this profession is it's helping people build the capacity to make that choice.
Yes. Yes.
Is how I would. I love the quote, and that's how I would perceive it. Is there is choice in there, but we all need ideas, concepts, narratives, help to be able to make the kind of choices that optimizes our life and our decisions and our sport if we're playing sport. So I think it's a great quote to finish on and for people to ponder and reflect upon. Donna, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, Dan, this has been awesome. I've loved talking with you. Hope we can do it again.
We certainly shall. Well, everyone, I really enjoyed that podcast, and I'd love to hear what you, the listener, thinks. So please do get in touch via Twitter or Facebook or through my website, danabrahams.com, to tell me exactly what you think of the Sports Psych Show, and if you do have any suggestions, I'd be delighted to hear them. I'm already looking forward to next week's episode. Bye for now.